Welcome to Ride the Wave, hosted by me, Jeff Fisher, and co-hosted by Mark Robinson, in partnership with the Ride the Wave Foundation. Visit us at ridethewave.org, where we're dedicated to empowering their lives through free resources in servant leadership, mental health wellness, and how to find a purpose. At Ride the Wave, we believe in the power of every story, talent, and voice. Our commitment is clear: to bridge divides, unite communities, and build an all-inclusive, modern campus for those experiencing homelessness. So let's dive in and ride the wave of positive change together. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us at the Ride the Wave podcast. Unfortunately, right now, my right-hand man, he is not feeling well today, so Mark is not here, but I'm here with my friend Dave.
Pleasure to be here, man.
Absolutely. And Dave I met at acting classes. He's a professional actor. So Dave Fero, he's a friend. And Skylamis Studios was where we did that. And if you go to www.skylamas.com, you could take a look at the different packages. Really great fun time. You know, it's helped Mark and I really too.
It's helped me tremendously.
I know. It really has. It's very confidence-wise, also memorization, overall just really everything, how to speak. You know, I always like to public speak and stuff like that. So I feel like through trial and error, I've gotten good at it.
Yeah.
So it's only helpful for stuff like that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I've always kind of involved myself in the world a little bit. Like when I was in high school and college, I took like improv classes and stuff like that. And the reason why I fell in love with it is because you learn how to get comfortable with yourself, you know? You put yourself in goofy situations and you learn how to act outside of your skin and you're outside of your comfort zone. And it just makes you more comfortable with who you are. And then it helps in so many different little facets, right? Like it's not just acting. It's, you know, you could use this in your professional world. You can use it in your personal world. And it's good for laying a foundation of figuring out exactly who you are, what you're comfortable with, and then kind of taking it from there.
Yeah, and Christina is doing a great job. She's such a great teacher and very fun. And I agree. It could be just for that, bettering yourself, getting better confidence, doing something outside of the box, not even if you're not going to be an actor or actress.
Exactly. Yeah. There's people that are in the class that don't want to pursue that long term, and they love it. They love it. So.
Yeah, man. And it's been a great opportunity just to get to know you. And we were talking, your family history seemed really amazing. One reason why we wanted to be on was for us to really go back in your history and share that.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for having me on the show.
Of course.
It's definitely an honor. This is my first podcast, so I was trying to figure out, like I was Googling online, like different rules of things not to do on podcasts, yada, yada, yada. I was even talking to some of the people here that work here, and they were like, you're fine, don't just act like yourself. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So just don't eat the mic. That was the first thing
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, just a little bit about myself. I am half Cuban, half Portuguese. I'm a first generation American. My parents came from their countries. My mom came from Cuba when she was like a week old in 66, something like that. My dad came from Portugal when he was 9 years old. And at the time, both countries were kind of going through, I mean, Cuba, obviously, it's well documented that it had so many issues with Castro and that whole regime and everything that was going on. And in the 60s, there was a mass exodus.
Right.
Illegal. It was legal exodus. They came on these things called the Mariel boat lifts. And my mom was like a week old.
And that's 90 miles to Key West?
Well,
is that where they were?
Yeah, so they went to, I believe the boats took them to Florida, and then they took the trip. They were in Florida for, I believe, like 3 months. And then from there, they came up to Jersey because at the time, and I grew up in Newark, at the time, Newark, New Jersey was like the shit. That's where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Like think like Jersey City now. Like that's where everybody thought Newark was headed towards. Absolutely was at the time. But then, you know, you look back in history and you see like the riots that happened in the late 60s there, and it kind of just like turned everything on its head, and you get into a whole political conversation about what happened in Newark. But
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there. But they moved up to Jersey, and because they wanted to live in this area. My father came from Portugal when he was around 9 years old because there was threats of a similar situation going on over there. There was potential, what's the word? I'm blanking on the term.
Tyranny of some sort? Or?
Yeah, like there was threat of the government being overthrown.
Okay, so civil war maybe.
Essentially, there was just everybody in Portugal at that time, around like the late 60s, early 70s, was kind of like on edge about politically what was going to happen there. So my grandfather kind of picked everything up, and he had a pretty successful business over there. So he left a lot of things to come over here to the States. I'm glad they did, because if they didn't, I would not be here right now. So
yeah. So it's because you don't see it as often from like first generation. Like because I'm third. Like we were talking about, I have that old chest from my grandmother or great grandparents. That came over from Ireland. So it's really close to home there. I mean, they're right there. So I'm sure the stories of
I mean, I have cousins and uncles of mine that came over through Mexico, so they did that whole track and all that stuff. So there's some pretty crazy stories that my family holds tight to the chest that I haven't even been privy to really hear the whole story.
Yeah, it's too bad that I would, such great stories like that, they'll hold to the chest, even though like I get it. It's probably, pride. My grandfather was such a strong guy too.
Mm-hmm.
He, as a kid, was throwing out, he was like 13 or 14 or something, cartridges that would explode through coal mines in Pennsylvania.
Really?
And before dinner, he would do that. We'd throw them in the fire. And then his mom, so my grandmother, called him in for dinner while he was doing that, and it blew up in his face, and he was blind. And when he was 13, had to take a train and go to this hospital by himself for special blind kids. And it was, long story short, it was a miracle that he could even see a little bit. So he had one glass eye growing up and everything.
Oh my God.
But imagine being like 13, but no complaints, nothing like that. I don't know about your family. It's you get your work done.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have money in your pocket? How's work? Blah, blah, blah. It was through the Great Depression and all that. There's a respect for work there. And I think I get that work ethic from my grandparents.
Yeah,
too.
I mean, it was definitely a different mindset. The older generations that is now unfortunately dying off because they're hitting those like 80s at this point was almost like a mentality of just deal with it, roll with it, and move on. Right? There was now like we're the mental health is such a huge conversation. That was never a thing.
No.
They just, it wasn't like nobody cares, so I'm just gonna do what I have to do, right? And that was the mentality. And it got things done, but there's obviously some trickle down effects that happen from having that mentality. So there's caveats to everything, right? So
yeah, there is. 6 other kids, poor. The nurse at the school had to give them shoes and stuff like that. But they all the kids took care of the parents though.
Yeah.
Everybody worked collectively for the family, which was nice.
Yeah.
And you had to work if you're not going to school, that type of thing.
Yeah.
That I think is nice.
Absolutely. I mean, my grandfather only completed, I think, like the 6th grade or something like that. My dad's dad. And he was very successful. Like they came over here, and when they came over here, he started doing woodworking because that's what his craft was in Portugal. He was also a singer. So he was a performer in Portugal as well.
Oh, cool.
He had like his little group, and they would travel all around Portugal and all kinds of stuff.
Do you think that's where you get it a little bit?
Maybe. I'd like to think
entertainment.
so. Maybe. I mean, he's definitely the entertainer of the family, or was. Well, so when they came over here, he started his little company, and they were kind of doing little jobs. And then when my father turned 18, he didn't go to college. He ended up going to like trade school and stuff like that. But they started doing renovations and little jobs here and there. And then they ultimately got to a point where they were building houses and building multifamilies in Newark, in those areas, stuff like that. And, after my grandfather retired, that's when my father really like blew up the business and started doing high rises and all that kind of stuff. Like he really got into the nitty gritty of like steel construction and all that stuff. And, they did unbelievably well for themselves. And growing up, seeing that progression, like living in Newark, which is the most beautiful place in the world. Definitely has its rough edges to it. Living paycheck to paycheck as a kid, living in an apartment, we did what we could growing up in that atmosphere. And around those people that are just always working. I mean, there was times in my life where I asked my mother as a kid, I was a young kid, like, when is dad coming home? Because he would leave before I would wake up to go to school, and then I would go to bed before he came back. So like I wouldn't see him for like a week at a time. So just that constant hard work and dedication to moving your life forward into, in one direction was something that I was always around. And my family's a bunch of entrepreneurs, A to Z. You could throw an industry out there, and I'm sure that there's somebody in my family that has kind of gotten involved in it. So it builds this mentality of just, it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? Like my parents always told me, it's not so much like you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be like this buttoned up professional, but whatever you do, go 100% into it.
I agree with that.
And it's a good mentality to have. You also have to understand yourself. I believe. I think there's a really big there's self-awareness in the world. I think is super, super important, and being able to understand that you could accomplish something is phenomenal, but understanding your shortcomings and where you need help, I think, is even more important.
Yeah, and as a leader too, I'm learning that.
Yeah,
the gaps of what are my strengths, what could I bring to the table, and then getting people that are better than me to fit into areas where I'm not.
Yeah,
in those gaps, and finding that, and self-awareness is really important. That whether it's
super
through journaling or writing, uncovering some of those things. I agree.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just you just got to find it within yourself. It takes time to figure those things out. It's not something that you're just it's all gonna click one day and you're gonna be like, oh, well, I need somebody here, I need somebody there. It takes time to figure out what you're good and what you're not good at. And there's a big difference between entrepreneur and intrapreneur. And you could have your own business and be an intrapreneur as long as you have other people that are supporting you in those ways that you need.
What do you mean
in.
by the two?
So entrepreneur is somebody that's going out. They're a self-starter. They kind of do all and that's like the prototypical entrepreneur, right? Like they do everything themselves. They're creating something themselves. An intrapreneur is somebody that needs assistance, either on like the structure end or the business development end or something. And that's okay. Like you could absolutely make a business and be successful being an intrapreneur. My father is an intrapreneur.
Yeah, I think actually knowing when to ask for help and getting that help professionally, and also surrounding myself with people that are better than me in that space, making sure that I'm going to the Entree Leadership Master Series and being in front of people that have navigated at a high level for mental health strategies and, various like time management for business, strategies for holding teams accountable, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that type of, because I've entered a space, especially through the show, we were talking about it a little bit, like it's so educational for me. I'm just on this journey of continuous learning now and improvement. I feel like that's,
if you ain't learning, you ain't earning, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a constant grind. Like, so when I graduated college, I went into corporate America because I thought that was the right move. That's what you want to do. That's where that's the safe route, right? And I did that for a number of years, and it had its perks. Health benefits are great.
Yeah, there's security.
There's always security in that world, but I hated it. I couldn't stand it. Like the ladder, the nepotism, the way that a lot of how they're structured, it drove me crazy. I had that same taste that my father had and other people in my family had, that they wanted to be self-sufficient and yada, yada, yada. And that has its own caveats as well. But I wanted to get involved. I wanted to do something and build something for myself. I didn't want to build something for somebody else.
Yeah.
And then that's when I got my real estate license and I started doing real estate. And I did that for a while, realized that something was still missing, and I realized that the safe route wasn't really working for me. And that's when I started, doing some self-searching and kind of figuring out exactly who I am, what makes me happy, and what I want to do.
Yeah.
And my father, my cousins, my brother, people around me have always told me that I need to be in front of the camera. You need to get out there. You have a personality. You're a bubbly son of a bitch. Like, just go do it. So I did. And I remember my father was like, I've been telling you for years to start doing this. He's like, so you absolutely have my support behind this. And
that's great.
I loved it. I mean, I got involved.
You're good at it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's not easy to get to that deeper level and get, not push per se. I think Christina does a really good job of bringing that out in people.
Yeah.
But like when she asked me a little bit about narrowed down Maya, who's my cousin, who's 4.
Yeah.
Because Chris and I don't have kids. So when I felt like I was really talking to her, I felt that, and tapping into that emotion is something else. It's pretty interesting.
Christina, who's running the acting program at Skylama Act, she is unbelievable at figuring out what the right pain points to push at are, and she knows how to push them. Because acting is all about, especially when you get more into like the dramatic side of acting, it's very much of unlocking things within yourself and then putting them into the character that you're playing.
Yes.
Right? Like people think that crying on demand is like you have to think about somebody dying or whatever it is. That necessarily doesn't have to be the fact. You could actually get to that point just imagining other people that are important to you in front of you and then incorporating what you're doing in that moment with that person, and it could get you there. And it's within a controlled state. And she is so good at navigating those waters inside of your brain. I think like I've had a number of acting coaches in my life. She is hands down one of the best that I've met. And I've only worked with her for probably 2 months now, something like that. Good. And she's fantastic.
Do you also think that it's probably, it could be unhealthy to tap into certain things that would be from, like if you had something tragic that happened to you and you go into that fully. It probably is not a good thing mentally.
She uses the phrase no emotional masturbation, right? So like it's about like if you're going through something, like it could be dangerous for you to be in that world in that moment. It's all about controlling those emotions, right? Having the capability to navigate those waters yourself and figure out how you could put it out there in a tasteful way, right? Yeah. She uses the phrase emotional masturbation because you don't do that in public, right? Yeah. So it's interesting to learn how to kind of figure out how to go about it and tap into those skills and execute them on a consistent basis, because the acting world, you could have a day where you are bubbly and you feel great and you have a lot of energy, and then you have to act sad. And it's like, how do I kind of bounce from how I feel in that moment to, you know, an emotional person that needs to act like they are in disarray? Or
it's true. I had that night where I had a little bit too much coffee that night, a little bit tired, put some energy into work.
Man.
And then it ends up, so I have respect. I have a lot of respect for actors.
It's a lot of work. So like from the actual skill base of it, it's a lot of work because there's so many angles that you could look at it from. I mean, like Ryan Gosling, for instance, he was a dancer his entire life. And if you watch a lot of what he does, he has unbelievable control of his body. Yeah. He could do, he's very funny because he knows how to move his body in space in a way, and it comes off as comedic because he has so much control. So dancing is a big part. Obviously, knowing how to use your voice is a big thing. So singing lessons are something that I'm even looking into doing. The acting classes, all kinds of stuff. It's you have to attack it from so many different dimensions and so many different angles. And then on the other side of it, actually working in the industry, if you don't love it, it's hard to do because it is 90% of the time you are getting no's. Yeah. And being a working actor it's stressful because you know who you are. You know what you could put out there. You know that, you know, this is something that you could tackle and just run with, but there's so much competition. It's so saturated, and there's so many people going for little jobs. There's really not too many of them out there. So it's tough to kind of crack into. And like I said, if you don't love it, it's hard to do it because you're going to get no's 99% of the time.
Yeah. Some sales are like that, or can be too. You have to be okay and understand that there's going to be more failure there. Yeah. But like Sylvester Stallone, around 1,000 times he was rejected. And they were not going to have him act. They didn't want him to act in Rocky. Could you imagine Rocky getting turned down 1,000 times? And them saying to him that he's not an actor and shouldn't even be in it. And look at what a amazing career he had after that.
Yeah, it's that one yes that could change your life. Exactly.
Never give up.
Exactly.
You got to keep going and pushing.
You never know where it's going to come from. You never know you never know what someone else is creating, because even if you're not the right person for the majority of the roles out there, you might be the right person for one role, and that one role might actually turn into something legitimate. Yeah. And then you could kind of run with that. I mean, there's like actors, there's so many different actors for so many different reasons. You look at like Ryan Reynolds, right? And he plays himself. Like he just does him, you know? Yeah. But people love him. He does it so well that he's
Chris
able
Pratt,
to.
I feel is like that too.
Yeah. So like there's some people that are just such strong personalities that they make it in the industry. And then there's those technician types. Like Robert De Niro is a phenomenal actor. He can play a number of different roles. You know, Joaquin Phoenix is the same way. Like there are such just they're so diverse, and they could do so many different things you just never know. Like, you could be a professionally trained actor from the time that you were 5 years old, and you can make it your work's life, and you could be, super deep and super diverse. But then there's those actors out there that, just fit a role really, really
Right.
well.
Yeah, they kind of have their...
And they just run with it, and it just continues to build from there.
Do you have a vision for your career specifically?
I'm not getting ahead of myself. Okay. I would like it to be, so I love doing this, right? I love acting. I love being in front of the camera. I was always a creative individual. My mom always said that, like, she never had to worry about me whenever we would go somewhere, because all I would do is just bring my toys, and I'd be in my own little world.
Yeah.
And I'd just be playing on, like, we'd be at a restaurant, and I'm just sitting there just playing with my toys, and I'm not throwing, French fries across the restaurant or yelling or whatever, because I would just kind of get locked into, like, that creative place, and I would just do it for hours. And even when I was home, I would just sit in my room with my action figures and just do that and just create scenarios.
Micro machines, the little cars. I would line them up on the couch for hours, just spending time just lining up all over these little cars when I was a kid.
Yeah. So I've always loved tapping into, like, that creative side of myself. That's part of the reason why I adore the industry so much, and I adore the act of acting. Am I sitting here and going to say that I'm going to become a Hollywood actor and be incredibly famous? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, I'll be okay with it. I would like to get myself to a point where I am doing it consistently. I could be a creative. I could pump stuff out there, but I also do other things. An important thing in the acting world is you have to have a survival job. You have to. If you don't, then it's it's too risky, right? You're really playing a dirty game at that point, because even actors that work on a consistent basis, they could have years where they make $30,000. They could have a year where they make $150,000.
Very inconsistent.
Super inconsistent. Yeah. And especially with the payout structures, how some of these things work. Like, you could do a commercial. Let's say I do a commercial today, right? And that commercial, the payout is whenever it gets released is when you'll get paid. Like, you'll get paid for, like, filming and stuff, especially if it's for a bigger company. Once that commercial gets released, that's when you get paid off of it, and you get paid as long as it's running. So I could do a commercial today.
Oh, okay.
And
so
I won't
get a residual on how many times it gets played.
Essentially, yeah, it depends how it's structured. They're all different.
Is that usually depending on the success of the commercial or how many ratings it gets? Does it continue that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's so many different angles and so many different
I'm
ways
sure
that
there's
the
a lot
industry
of
works.
different ways.
But, like, you could do a commercial today and not see that money for 3 years from now.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like, it's hard to just put yourself financially under the strain of, I'm just going to be an actor. How I put it is, I am a real estate agent by day, I'm a bartender by night, and my alter ego is an actor.
There you go. You're a hustler, man. You're an entrepreneur, hustler, trying to do your thing. And I get it. Like, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, right?
Exactly.
And, over plan.
Yeah.
And take it step by step, because you have to also see what door is open, opens up for you. And that changed for me a lot. I was going to a conference for work, and prior I had seen something. I think it was even Kevin Hart was sitting down. His Heart to Heart.
Yeah,
he has that sit down where he has a sommelier come out with wine. It was Jay-Z or something like that was on, actually. Okay. And they were talking, and Jay-Z was like, one thing that really changed for me is when I stopped really pursuing externally and hustling for opportunities, but I more stayed open to receiving the opportunities internally, and, more of a receiving and seeing what opportunities come, keeping my eyes open for that. And I had done that. I put together like 3 goals at a conference and went to that. And I've been doing that, and that's been working for me lately. You know what I mean? Instead of just, of course, you got to get the numbers out there. I'm sure the resume or your agent has to, throw it all out there. It's like being on a dating website, right? The numbers on a dating website, you have to
all on Hinge out here.
you just kind of have to put it out there. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a numbers game at some point. Yeah. Too. No, so I get that, but at the same time, being open to receiving and not.
You can't say no to anything. Yeah. You can't say no to anything.
Unless it's going to be like immoral or something.
Yeah, obviously. There's obviously boundaries.
Not anything.
Yeah. But like, something that I've learned is that, and I've kind of put this into all aspects of my life, and I've started to figure this out within the last like 2 years, being an open-minded and just going for things. You never know what's going to happen. Obviously, sometimes you could find yourself in precarious situations with that mentality, but there's a lot of good that comes from it as well. The more things you say yes to, and that power of yes, it opens so many more doors than you could even imagine. Like, I mean, you never know who you're going to meet. Right. You never know what situation you're going to come across. You never know how you could grow and develop in a situation or learn something unless you're in it. So you just got to dive into whatever opportunities come your way and just go from there. I mean, that's my mentality.
I agree with that. I think the most successful people are doers.
Yeah.
Not always even the smartest people in the room. And they know how to do what we talked about before. Delegate certain responsibilities and get people on their team that they know are better than them with certain things, and know your strengths. Yeah. And then try to really play to that. And then I don't know if like you could build, if your agent sees that maybe, and then builds roles around you, or how that works, or if you just are everything and anything. Just trying to get,
so I'm very much still on like the beginning stages of it. I don't have my SAG card, so I'm not a union actor yet. So my agents are freelance. I have multiple of them, and they just throw things at me. Whatever they come across, they'll shoot over to me. I'll apply for. I'll do whatever at home, audition I have to do, and then I'll just send it over. And because as of right now, the way that I'm doing it is, I'm just, like you said, building that resume. It is a numbers game, especially in the beginning stages. Yeah. You just want to constantly get yourself out there, and and now we're in such a social media driven world that you want to be out there in that facet as much as possible as well. Because the more content you have, the more you could build your resume, the more experience you have, the more of a fit you are for bigger things, because they just want to see that you could handle it, right? Because I'm a firm believer that everybody has talent. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The way that I look at when it comes to building something, it's 10% luck, 10% skill, 80% hard work.
Right.
The top 20% are very important, obviously, but you can figure out the rest, right? You could, as long as you're the one putting the work in every day, and as long as you're the one showing up every day and doing what you have to do, there are going to be opportunities that open up for you.
Yeah, and I think the self-development aspect, the looking under the hood, like we were talking about before, and that self-reflection could open up, and there's definitely techniques for it, a purpose within someone as well, so that unique skill could turn into something. Because when I'm getting up now, it's working towards a purpose that I feel is bigger than me. It's not just me going to the computer and doing that. And when I'm not on and I'm off, whether getting burnt out or something like that, it's because I'm off the purpose, really. It's that. That's how I'm blessed. And I think like Mark and I, what we're working on, and trying to cut the ribbon to the campus eventually, leading up to that. And it really is fostering that. It's because you can through certain strategies uncover your purpose and what your unique angle is. And if somebody does do that, it's a total game changer. Yeah. Like if you, for whatever reason you're doing acting, whether it's to make money or no, it's actually to maybe someday do a role that'll affect people for real. Yeah. Like a real movie that will affect real change in the world or something like that.
I like impacting people. Yeah. And I've come to realize that that's what I appreciate about myself, is that I like to impact people, obviously positively. Like growing up, I have a big family. Like my grandmother had a ton of brothers and sisters, and the family tree just kind of exploded from there. So I have tons of cousins, and they're all like generally in this area. The majority of them are in Jersey. Some are in Florida, some are like in Austin, and they're like kind of all, not Austin, I'm sorry, Arizona. Some are still in Cuba, some are still in Portugal, actually. But having that big family, like it almost was like a competition to see who could be the loudest growing up all the time. Yeah. So we have a lot of really big personalities. And what I realized growing up was that I like to be the entertainer. I like to, I like to be the center of attention. Like I'll admit it.
I was just thinking I was going to say that.
I like to be the center of attention. So like growing up and like living in that world with so many people around you all the time and being comfortable with yourself and finding the silly and the serious and like being, obviously like sometimes you're not taken as seriously as you want to. So there's caveats to it. But I enjoy when people have a good time around me.
You seemed like that when I first met you. There was a confidence to you, definitely. There was but you seemed like somebody that was pretty cool. And I think you and I had a little bit of a connection right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
There with that. I don't know. I felt like I had some similarities or
I'd agree.
Could relate to you.
I'd absolutely agree. I mean,
it's good to have that energy, man. That positivity is so important this day and age.
Yes, it absolutely
smiling like that, that creates serotonin in you and the other person.
Of course.
We're literally all pharmacists walking around. When you smile and somebody else does, serotonin in their brain takes place. Like it's everything you say and do.
It's the mirroring effect.
Be vitamin C.
It's the mirroring effect. Yeah. So I remember I saw this study. They sat people down and then they flashed faces in front of them and they had to rate them on how good they felt with that person, right? And the person didn't say a word. It was just them smiling or them frowning or them just straight-faced. And they were told that they were supposed to be rating them, but in reality, they were watching them and watching their own reactions to those photos. And you saw that when somebody would be smiling and it was a genuine smile, the person would also smile in that situation. Yeah. And they're like, oh, this is a warm person, blah, 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 blah. I really like that being around this person. They don't even know who they are. They have no idea who they are. All they're seeing is that there's just their face. And they notice that the more you are around positive energies, the more positive you're going to become yourself.
Yeah, and it's contagious to other people. And we've been living. That's the wave. That's the reason why we're sitting here is really because of that. And there's nothing better than being in that mode.
Yeah.
And most people, when Mark and I we were out handing out flyers and stuff, it didn't matter what age. It didn't matter what age, what anybody looked like, their race. And I don't know, you could very well be book smart and stuff like that. So it's not, we didn't even talk about that. But some people have a social intelligence too. Like there is an aspect of people. EQ. Yeah, exactly. And, all the jobs looking back where I jumped around too, whether it be retail or within my career, I thought a certain way, I'm doing these things wrong. Everybody else is secure in like a job. Looking back, it was such a benefit. I learned a lot about what type of managers that I want to be like. What type of managers I don't want to be like. All different kinds of training each time. I was always in class. I was always getting information, stuff like that. And now it's such a benefit.
You get more bees with honey than you do vinegar.
It is. I didn't realize I was in school the whole time there. I just thought I was hopping around too much in jobs. But it was a school of social. Yeah,
man. You could always learn something. And having people skills, I think, are very, very important. And you don't have to be a natural at it. Like it's like anything else. You just work at it. You just figure out, what works and what doesn't work, and you just be socially aware. Self-aware, and you can figure it out.
I feel like it's a big problem right now. I feel like especially with a lot of the kids.
I'll tell you what the problem is.
It's big time.
It's this.
And video games.
This is the problem.
Video games, the social aspect, and it's so important.
It's terrible.
It's so huge. The path is to the person. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
And everything else is distracting from that. Correct me if I'm wrong. No matter what, if you're looking on, whether it's Chat GPT or just online or anything, I feel like the best information I ever get is from talking to people and getting their experience and getting what they went through and their story around whatever it is I'm trying to learn. Yeah. It's just so much more informative and a different kind of learning that I get if I'm wondering what this is and I look it up online. I don't know if that happens to you.
Yeah. So like technology has advanced us so far, especially since the dawn of the internet. Like we have so much information at our fingertips, which is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it's great.
You could do a lot with that. But the drawback is that we've become obsessed with it and that's all we do. And now we connect with individuals through an online platforms. And that I feel like it's really hurting the younger generation. Like when I was growing up, especially having so many people around me, building a personality and building who you are and understanding how to, maneuver in social situations and learning how to connect with people and just sitting down and just having a genuine conversation is something that I learned all throughout growing up.
Yeah, which is
great.
And
this came in a little bit later into life. And I find myself absorbed in social media quite often to the point where I need like breaks just because it's addictive. Just the swiping in itself, it just locks you in.
Yeah.
And it closes you off from the rest of the world. that's the issue, is that the kids that are growing up in that world, and especially the ones that grew up through like COVID, and we're going through like
that was the
pure
worst.
like main developmental years.
It's hard to
during
learn
COVID.
virtually.
Yeah,
for
man.
me sometimes, let alone being that age and having to go through that. And who knows what the kid's environment is too. If it's a poor environment, and then you got parents that are stressed out, that are not working, that are home. It could be a whole thing there. I can't imagine all that.
I mean, working in the restaurant industry, you see it a lot. Honestly,
It's
I
a good
feel like
point. It's a big
I
blow.
feel like everybody should at least work in the restaurant industry for a small part of their
I'd be
life.
so bad about that. I don't think I would remember the orders.
You got a notebook, man. You just write everything down.
But I don't really see waitresses really do that as much anymore.
I do it all the
write
time.
down orders. I would feel like I'd be a terrible waiter.
Even when I'm behind the
I
bar.
think I'd be dropping trays. I'd be awful. I don't know.
They got people for that. You're good.
So you bartend too?
Yeah, bartend, I serve. But when I serve, you're obviously seeing a lot more kids at the tables than you are at the bar. And the amount of kids that cannot order for themselves and that cannot look me in the eyes and tell me what they want
alarming.
is very alarming.
Yeah.
It's very alarming. And you like, it's refreshing when you see a group of kids that come in with their parents and they're not on their tablets. They're not asking for the Wi-Fi password.
Yeah.
They're sitting down having a conversation. And I'm like, okay, these parents knew what they're doing. They're raising their kids the right way. And then they're telling me what they want. They're like, oh yeah, let me get a mac and cheese. Let me get this. Let me get that. It's super important. Connecting to people and being able to just talk to someone and communicating is super important. And the younger generations are losing that, and it's terrifying.
And, Sky Lamas, the classes that were taken, we had mentioned it a little bit before, are really good for anybody that has either kids or if you're younger and sort of want to gain more skills confidence-wise. There's even one-on-one sessions too. If you're a little bit embarrassed about being in front of a group and stuff like that, I just think it's a great way to work with somebody comfortably, to get outside the box a little bit. And what could it hurt? You're just gaining a little bit of, skills to maneuver and basically be social.
Yeah.
So I think things like that are really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, it works for
workshops.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that they're also allowing people to sit into classes just to kind of get like a sense of what's going on.
Okay.
I
in
know that
Totowa, New Jersey.
New Jersey, yes. When you're an actor and you're looking at different studios, a lot of the times you have concern of what you're going to walk into because there's a lot out there that isn't 100% legit. And a lot of studios don't allow people to sit in just to kind of get a look at to see what's going on.
Yeah.
But they do. And we've had a number of people that sat in. Your wife sat in on one, actually, didn't she?
She did, yeah. Kristen sat in one
Yeah.
just to check it out. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. Mark did a really good job too. I was surprised, because I didn't know what to expect with us, going in, or, I'm thinking to myself, it's too bad he's not here. I could bust on him. Like, oh, is he going to embrace it? Or how are we going to be with it? And he was very good.
You could tell that, like, in the beginning, he was a little shy and then, like, he had to be pushed a little bit.
Yeah,
but I think he's doing really, really well.
He's doing really well.
Yeah,
That
man.
one where it was like that one scene where he was like a little bit like the whistleblower. That was intense. I was proud of him. I think he did a really good job, and I enjoy it too.
Yeah, and there's so many different games that we do on a consistent basis that make you comfortable with each other.
Yeah, the warm ups are interesting.
The
Kind of
warm-ups are
connects
cool.
you.
We actually played a game last time that was called Sit, Stand, or Kneel. And one person has to be sitting at all times, one person has to be standing at all times, one person needs to be kneeling at all times. And then a scenario gets thrown at you and you have to just maneuver yourself through that scenario. The idea is to understand your body in space and then also be registering where other people's bodies are in space and then also going through the scenario. And ours was a busy day at Starbucks and it just turned into pure chaos, like absolute chaos. There was another one that so Christina had like a magical remote, right? And there's two people on TV. And when she says click, the channel changes. And anything on TV, right? And we just had to play a quick like 30-second, just skit of, something on TV. Either like a news broadcast or someone at the Olympics or a movie or something dramatic or, a soap opera. Like, doesn't matter. And that was a lot of fun. That got pretty
Yeah,
nutty
sorry
pretty
I missed
too.
that one.
That's all right, man.
It is a good time.
Yeah.
And it's good for the memory too.
Mm-hmm.
Memorization,
absolutely.
stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, I like I've said already a bunch of times, like anybody and everybody could benefit greatly from just getting out there and just expressing yourself and also kind of, doing some, self, like just self-adventuring and just kind of figuring out in
Yeah.
your head like who you are. And I feel like even if you're the shyest of the shy, you'd be surprised in what you could find about yourself just throwing yourself into like a situation like that and just doing it, you know?
Yeah, and it just goes to show too, like where you came from,
Mm-hmm.
which was not much. And having, I'm sure, a father that wasn't around too was a little bit difficult at times, wondering where he was. And it was like that sacrifice that he made at that time
Yeah.
to support his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that our generations, like me being third generation or here for so long, we take that for granted sometimes
Mm-hmm.
in this country. You know, seeing your family come and that hustle, and that's what was mine those generations ago.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the lack of gratitude sometimes is our main issue.
Yeah.
And really that too many blessings, not enough appreciation.
Yes.
I feel like for our people that have been here for a while, stuff
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
is something. So I always try to be as grateful too,
Yeah.
which I think is a sword against evil, 100%.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Being grateful for, I've taken stock on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I might have had a bad day, but what are the things I have? I have food on my plate, clean water.
Yeah.
I got AC.
Yeah.
There's people that I know right now that don't have that.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like from just the way that we look at the world as Americans, a lot of people kind of take this stuff for granted. Like there's so much turmoil just, you know, between groups within the United States, and obviously there's a conversation to be had there about everything that's going on. But I think a lot of people miss what the rest of the world is dealing with. Like they don't realize how good we have it. Like I've traveled some. I haven't gone to everywhere in the world, but I absolutely would love to go to as many countries as humanly possible.
Yeah.
But you see what the rest of the world is like, and you're like, wow, like we have it good. We have it really good.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that. And it's sad because like I've gone to Eastern Europe, I've gone to Spain. I had people in my life that were from India, and they tell me stories that, you know, they would go there and visit India, and there were kids that were on the streets that were begging, and the people that kind of like controlled them, they would mutilate them. So they would garnish more money from people because they were missing an arm or missing eyes or stuff like that. So like there's a lot of
For
evil.
selling the body parts on the black market.
No. They would mutilate them so when they begged, they would get more money because people felt bad for them.
It's terrible.
So there's a lot of evils out there. Like
There
that
is a lot
doesn't
of
happen
evils.
in the U.S. If it does, it's at an extremely low level compared to like what it happens out
Yeah,
there.
I think
But-
there's a lot that does happen that doesn't get reported. We don't know about it. You know, there's a lot of evil. Javon on the show when we were talking about Hollywood, I think, or one of the episodes we were on, we had talked about other countries and just what they can do, like the MS gangs, how they'll sacrifice babies. They'll literally drink blood and get that power from there. That's why the power of prayer, you know, things like that are extremely important. You know, I'm a spiritual person. So
Yeah.
I do see it as a spiritual war overall. Things like that are, you know, even all those years back, even in the book, there was turmoil then. There was political dismay. There was things that were, you know, happening with Rome and war and all that was happening. So for me, when I look at anything like that, it goes right back to what we're saying. Like a coffee bean can transform from the inside out. It really is building that foundation because it's always going to be the same. There's always going to be problems in the world. There's always going to be turmoil. Our parents were going under desks when the bombs were supposed to come from Russia. You know, it's constant, but what it is building up that foundation inside.
Yeah.
And exploring that and making sure that you're as stable as you can as the world's doing its thing and not get affected by it. It's easier said than done. It's the journey of my entire life, man.
Yeah.
Like that's all I'll be working on.
I mean, at the
You
end of
know.
the day, all you have is yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure that you're as strong as an individual as you can.
Right.
So if you focus on that, then you'll be good.
Yeah, and I heard Chris and I, we don't have kids. God willing, we're, you know, love to and stuff like that. It's like, you
That'd
know.
be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if it's in our cards. But, you know, it's protecting the kids from the snakes. Oh, no. It's not protecting the kids from the snakes, but building them up so they could be strong enough to be defending against the snakes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Building them up from the inside, encouragement, and making sure that they understand what they could accomplish and do.
Yeah.
Positivity, things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy, you know, accountability's got to be there too. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just thoughts that
A strong foundation is extremely important.
Extremely important. I think it's everything. I think that's like the whole point. Like it's always going to be like that in the outside world. And really at the end of the day, when we're walking around, I mean, for the most part, I don't get into arguments with people about my race or anything. So it's all coming through me to me in screens. So it's a proactive approach too.
Yeah. I mean, growing up in Newark, like I only lived there until I was about like 14 years old. And then when we left, I was actually a little younger. When we left, we came to suburbia Denville, which is a huge culture shock.
Yeah, it's around where I was at. Mount Tabor, Denville. I had a lot of friends there.
Yeah. So you see a lot of, the family dynamics in Newark, and like growing up in there, and there's a lot of issues in those areas. It's getting better now. Like Newark is really turning around, and like those inner cities have a lot of support systems. So like stuff that you guys are doing, which I think is phenomenal. I've actually talked to a number of people about what you guys are doing, and you could just see their eyes just widen, just great. Because there's a huge need for it. So what you guys are doing is fantastic, and I wish you guys all the luck. I hope that everything happens the way that you guys need it to, and you guys make the impact that you absolutely want to, and I think you absolutely can.
I appreciate that. We're trying, and every day I think that Mark, it seems like yesterday we were really walking down the streets of Morristown, and we knew what we had. We kind of looked at each other and thought, it's a matter of time. We're going to just do step by step and do that. But
80% work, baby.
Hey, look, and it's a really great opportunity to bring something for real. And everything that we're doing strategy wise, even to get up into Gordon companies or, that world when I go to Entre Leadership, it's really important for us to do things like that and to just continue doing that. But I appreciate that. And
man, of course.
Organizations like City Relief and Dr. Bo, we're going to go and do Unity in the Community. It's going to be called. So something like that is going to be Mark going and painting that mural, which is going to be like a 6-pallet mural for kids. And they're going to do backpacks also for the community. So it's nice to have this type of platform where people could go and really talk about anything and even showcase talents. It's so multifaceted. It's a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just helping them build a foundation. And that was my point, was that you see that a lot of these families, they have extremely shaky foundations. And that's why there's a lot of issues that come up in those areas, is because just the dynamic that they grew up in wasn't always so strong. So they aren't capable of dealing with the world in, they get bit by the snake, as opposed to being able to defend themselves from the snake. So there's a lot of issues, and there's a lot of things that absolutely could come from somebody coming in and stepping in and helping them develop something that they may not have appreciation for because nobody really gave them that support to kind of just venture into those things that they wanted to do.
And it's all those places too. There's going to be Marvin came back, and it's going to be released. It's by now released out, which was methadone.
Okay.
And something like that. And what happens within the community and things like that. It's very eye-opening and stuff like that. So having the privilege to be able to educate people, on things like that, I think is important, because having awareness to get to that, because having something all inclusive is really important. And through that show, I realized too, a lot of it is culture issues in this place. So much bureaucracy. They're not treated nicely. Like if you're going to a whole bunch of resources, even if you have a house, and then you got to go here for this, you got to go there for that, and the people don't seem like all the time that they care, or then they'll say, oh, do this, and they don't follow up on it or whatever. It could be very deflating. Like I could understand why people would feel like they don't, especially if they're struggling with addictions, why people don't care. That's why I like a university, on site, everything there, and they don't leave until they're reformed. Like a graduation sort of, something like that.
I feel like
humane,
people just
nice.
Don't pay attention to them. Like growing up in this area, you see a lot of homeless people in like Newark and in New York when you go over there. I spent a lot of time of my life in New York, and there's so many homeless people around, and there's so many people tweaking out and on drugs that we've become so accustomed to it, and we just kind of ignore it. Like you don't even think twice about it. And I feel like that they're ignored, and like sometimes somebody has to step in and be something for them to help them get through whatever they're doing, because at the end of the day they're still people, right? They may not be they may not be a functioning member of society, but it doesn't mean that they're not able to. Right. So it's a sad reality that we have to work at to make better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one step at a time. It's leveraging the platform here, any money that hopefully comes through the book, the upcoming training and all that to try to come. But, people like you coming on and sharing your story and perspective and stuff like that is what it's all about.
Yeah, man,
and
absolutely.
And it's how people learn, really from people's story. And, you being from where you're from. And I mean, I hate to use the term, your parents kind of picked themselves up with the bootstraps, because it really was a lot of hard work that got there. I mean, they
100%.
definitely did.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like you said, can't do that. They're not in a position to be able to get that starting gun, at least, or that boost to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking from a perspective of like homeless and people in need and people who have addiction issues, yeah, it's hard to get started. So you absolutely need a little bit of help. But you also have to find it within yourself to want to do those things, right? I've had friends of mine that have had addiction issues, and until they acknowledge the fact that they have a problem and they want to fix it for themselves, not just because everybody's been telling them to fix it, but because they've kind of hit their rock bottom and they want to get it done and over with, and they don't want to be defined by that anymore. That's the most powerful part, is once you get to that point, and then it's just, there's no stopping you. Like the mental game is so much more important than anything else. No rehab in the world is going to be able to fix you if you aren't ready to do it. And it sucks, but that's just how those substances draw you in. You have to be able to want to do it for yourself for all those things to work. So it's 50% mental, and the rest is,
What made you kind of avoid that world? Did you get into it a little bit, or you just got lucky, or you just focused so much on work through your dad and stuff like that?
Growing up in those areas, my father saw, part of the reason why we moved out of that area is because my father saw, kind of who I was, and I was very much just like him. And I started getting myself into trouble, so they kind of yanked me out of that world a little bit. But I don't know. I guess I've always tried to figure out like the difference between having an addictive personality and not having an addictive personality. I luckily don't. So like I've never really been drawn to things. So
you were meant not to.
Yeah,
to get
like
into that.
it was for me. It was never like a really big issue. Obviously, I would splurge a little bit, drink here or there, like just normal stuff. But I just never liked it.
I didn't know if maybe your parents, because they were coming from countries like that they were maybe overly strict, or they were.
But what I have noticed about like European mindsets is that there's a different respect for things like alcohol. People are drinking much earlier in their lives, and they learn how to drink. So like binge drinking isn't really a big thing in Europe. Obviously people go out and party, but it's very different. Like my father and my grandfather, and they'll have like 2 glasses of wine, or maybe just like a glass of scotch, or some what we call aguardiente, which is like fire water. Like they absolutely indulge, but it's just for that, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing more to that. You could have fun without drinking. You could have fun without, really getting involved in drugs or whatever it is. So growing up, it was like, yeah, it's there. You could absolutely have a little bit if you want.
Yeah.
But
well, it's good. It's good you didn't fall into anything like that.
I also have a self-control thing. I like to be in control.
Oh, yeah.
So alcohol kind of stops you from doing that.
Yeah, it can. It can. No, yeah. Hey, it was really great having you on. This conversation went in so many different directions.
Yeah.
It was it was like informative too. I liked it because we went into acting, we went into self-development. I mean, there were so many different avenues that we hit, like the importance of relationships. I like this one. Yeah, it was nice to.
And the conversation could always continue. There's always so many more things that you could talk about.
I feel like in there we'll listen back and talk about having a more of an in-depth conversation on one of the things we touched upon, because I feel like we did so many things. We can narrow down another subject because what's great is like anybody that comes on, even if they're not like a Dr. Matt or somebody, people have knowledge in whatever they were into at one point and self-learned and something different. So it's amazing because people are so smart in things, and you don't have to have that education on paper.
Yeah. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a lawyer. You don't have to have a high IQ. Yeah. It's just, everybody has something that they could offer the world.
Yeah, the only thing we're missing is a fire pit after that.
I'll make some s'mores. Let's do it.
Yeah, Dave, we'll have you back, man. It was a pleasure having you on.
Good,
Thank
buddy.
you so much, everybody.
Pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in. Mark, we miss you. We miss you. We'll be on next time. And everybody, you guys take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you for tuning in to Ride the Wave. It's It's been a pleasure having you with us as we explore ways to make a positive impact together. Remember, every little wave creates a ripple of change. We appreciate any support you can provide as we plan to build an all-inclusive, modern campus and empower communities. For details on how you can contribute through various platforms, please visit us at ridethewave.org. Until next time, keep riding the wave of change with us. I'm Jeff Fisher, signing off, but the journey continues.